You have probably seen MotoGP riders do this. Or this. And definitely this. But what are they actually doing and why? Here are 10 things MotoGP champions do to go faster. This video is based on techniques I learned from Yamaha Champions riding school. The school is founded around teaching techniques that the best riders in the world use to go fast and be safe. So if you want to learn techniques used by champion riders, sign up to Champ School right now. I especially recommend you to take their online course Champ U before attending the in-person school. It features video deep dives into all the key concepts of going fast safely. Links down in the description. Now let's talk about some of the riding techniques champion riders use. Number 1. Smooth, not aggressive. When MotoGP riders break track records, one of the key aspects of their riding is that they are smooth in their inputs to the bike. That means being smooth on the brakes, smooth on the throttle, and being smooth in the way that they're moving around on the bike. So what does that mean practically? Let's see Michael and Chris from Champ School demonstrate the brake inputs of an aggressive rider versus a smooth rider.
Like right there. Man, that's pretty good. What about right there? How's Michael doing?
I think the rear wheel came off the ground that time.
That was pretty good. Right? Young aggressive man. Michael, how many points of brakes were you grabbing when you went to them?
Use about 40 points, 10 per finger.
Yeah, all right. So he's got this 40-point hand, right? Every time he goes to the brakes, 40 points, 40 points, 40 points, 40 points, 40 points, 40 points. Once he gets leaned over past 60, he just loses grip immediately, right? Because he's just got this abrupt way of doing things. So Michael, I want you to get to 40 points. Just take this moment. Before you build a lot of brake pressure, I want you to think about the first 5%. You squeeze that brake lever on, the calipers clamp those discs, the bike weight goes forward, and then you could build up to that 40 points. So we think of it as a millisecond of squeeze, a millisecond of the pads touch the rotors, the weight transfers forward. Now all of a sudden, that bike's gonna start working with us. So
the difference is that a smooth rider has an incredibly fine-tuned first and last 5% of input. So when they engage the brake lever, for the first 5% they build up pressure gently and then add more brake pressure as needed. The same is true of when a smooth rider releases the brakes. When letting go of the brakes, they are incredibly gentle with the last 5%. The same is true with the throttle. MotoGP riders roll the throttle very gently for the first 5% of input. So why are these first and last 5% so important? One of the reasons it's so important to smoothly load the tires is that tires are viscoelastic. This means that they are sensitive to the speed a load is applied. If we apply a load suddenly, the rubber will be very hard and not drape over the bumps in the road surface. If we ramp up the load, the tire will drape over the bumps in the road surface and provide more grip. Another reason that the first and last 5% are so important is that it allows the rider to feel how much grip is available. So before rolling the throttle, champion riders get a feel for how much grip is available, and thus they can adapt the rate at which they roll the throttle. Number 2, no corner is the same. The very best riders in the world are able to adapt to any corner and situation. This is a quote by former MotoGP world champion Casey Stoner. It's really hard to explain, because there's basically no two corners in the world that are the same. So to ride them in the same way, I think, maybe what sets me apart sometimes from other riders is the fact that I'll attack each corner the way it needs to be ridden. There'll be different patches, different surfaces in different areas. And sometimes the ideal line won't be the ideal line on that particular corner. So it's adapting yourself to each part of the track, whether you can use that part or you can't. This was demonstrated at Champ School with one of the most fun exercises I have ever done on a track. They called it the pointy end of the cone. They had instructors spread out across the track, putting down cones in our path. The goal for us students was to go to the pointy end of the cone. The way the cones pointed changed for every lap as well as where they were located. I understood from the instructors that they had done this exercise with tons of pro riders. and the very best riders in the world are able to keep within 1 second of their regular pace during this exercise. So how does a rider that is far on the outside of a corner get all the way to the inside of a corner? That leads nicely into point number 3. Brake lighter, longer. The very best riders in the world carry the brakes far into corners. In order to not slow down too much, they brake lighter. So what happens when we brake inside of a corner?
Slow down!
If the lean angle is constant, slowing down is going to tighten up the corner's radius, and vice versa. Accelerating is going to open up the corner's radius. So how does a rider that is far on the outside of a corner get all the way to the inside? Simple. Use the brakes until the bike is pointed where he/she wants it. So the very best riders in the world adapt their line inside of a corner using the brakes. Number 4. Get to wide open throttle earlier. Anyone who's into racing has heard that it's really important to get on the throttle early. What sets the very best riders apart is that they are able to get to wide open throttle earlier than their competitors. So in other words, a rider that starts rolling on the throttle early, but has to spend a lot of time to roll more and more because of not having a lot of grip on the rear, will have less speed at the end of straights as compared to a rider that waits just a tiny bit longer to start rolling on the throttle, but then gets to wide open throttle earlier on the exit. This all connects back to using the brakes to point the bike correctly, or to get direction, as Champ School calls it. Is there any other specific techniques that MotoGP riders use to be able to get to wide open throttle earlier? Yes, let's get to point number 5. Drop their head on the exit. Have you ever seen MotoGP riders do the move on the exit? They're keeping their upper body down, dropping their head to the inside of the corner on the exit to minimize the motorcycle's lean angle, and thus are able to get to wide open throttle earlier. They had a great way of showing us how to achieve this practically at Champ School. On the exit, you simply breathe out and relax to the inside. I tried this out and it made it so much easier to get the upper body to the inside of the corner. Number 6. Maintain focus. Have you ever seen Rossi sit down by his bike before the races? What is he doing? Praying to the riding gods? Rossi is setting himself up mentally before getting out there to race. He's getting focused on the task at hand. All the greatest racers in the world have an ability to stay focused, which is crucial to be able to perform the precise movements necessary when breaking track records. Nick at Champ School described this as having a mantra. Everyone might have a different mantra. It could be to squeeze the handlebars 2 times, or tell yourself that you're one bad man. Not having focus is the same thing as crashing your coffee, or for example, crashing your password. These are moments when we are not focused, and we want to avoid those moments on a racetrack at all costs. Number 7. Look soon, scan back. The greatest racers in the world look far ahead to see what is coming up, but they scan back to micro-position their bike on the track. The fact that we should look far ahead is something that a lot of racers have heard before. This enables us to see what is coming up and allows our brains to process our next moves. However, it is also important to scan back and see what is closer in front of us. This is something that racers do consistently on the track. Looking ahead, scanning back. Looking ahead, scanning back. It's all about balancing being able to process things in time and micro-positioning the bike on the track. This is what enables racers to get their body over the curbing, with the tires just outside the white line. Millimeter precision at 100 miles per hour, folks. Number 8. Use the rear brake to slow down load transfer. MotoGP riders use the rear brake a lot. It can help with controlling wheelies, and it also helps with slowing down the load transfer when braking for a corner. MotoGP riders get on the rear brake right before they engage the front brake. Have a look at the Champ School instructors showing how this works. You see how the bike just bounces up when no rear brake is engaged. But when Nick presses the rear brake, the rear of the bike slowly moves up. So why is this good? Well, this keeps the rear down, allowing for heavier braking without having the bike stoppy into the corner. Number 9. Use the right amount of fork travel. When braking for corners, the front forks collapse, setting the bike up to be easier to turn into corners. Well, did you know that all the greatest riders in the world turn in when the forks are in the same place in their travel? Riders who release the brakes before turning in is going to find that the bike doesn't really want to turn that well. The bike is going to feel very twitchy and nervous. Riders who turn in braking extremely hard, not letting go of the brakes even a tiny bit, is going to find that the bike doesn't want to turn in. The forks are completely buried and have no travel left, and the tire is highly deformed, which makes the bike really hard to turn. The greatest riders in the world brake hard and release a little bit of braking pressure before turning in, keeping the forks in a very specific part of their travel. To find out the exact amount and even more details on this topic, sign up to the Champ U online training program right now. Number 10. Ride in their head. Here's a quote by King Kenny Roberts, 3x 500 GP world champion. I sat there and just went over and over the track in my mind until I had the layout fixed and I knew where on track I wanted to be all the way around. I went back out on the track and broke the lap record on about the 3rd lap. It had all been done in my head. From that day, I started doing a lot more work in my mind. The greatest riders in the world work on visualizing in their head how they want to ride, and fix any mistakes they might have been doing on track in their head before they get out there. Some riders walk around the track taking down notes for every single turn on the track, and then look at the notes at the end of the day, maybe testing out different lines, seeing where they want to be. I tried this out practically and it does really improve the lap times. I think what it does is reduce the amount of processing time needed for each segment on the track. I've seen it before and I know what to do. I have a plan. Now I think you should get a plan and sign up to Champ School right now. I had a great time there, both learning things in the classroom, getting personal feedback from the instructors, and doing all the great drills that they had. They also did filmed laps, where an instructor rode behind us filming, and we then looked at everyone's filmed laps, getting personal feedback on our riding. This is my filmed lap and feedback on the 2nd day of riding.
Track up and open that entry much better than
I was
yesterday.
working hard on that, yeah.
It is.
Exactly. Makes turn one so
Damn, and then
fast.
gets that drive, right? And that's the difference. You get direction so much earlier when you open up the entry. It's hard to get off the corner with you. Beautiful job. Look at that, getting the head drop in there now.
Yeah.
Come on.
What do you think, Dustin?
I think he's going good, man.
Why is he starting to look smaller, Dustin?
Yeah, I was like, there was some engine sound, and I'm like,
Like, where's the brake? Oh, there's the brake. And I'm like, oh, ran away.
Yeah.
Maybe make him work a little bit. Man, phenomenal job, man.
Yeah.
Just really
Thanks.
seeing you actually dropping the head. Now you're putting the power down. You're getting a wide open throttle a lot earlier. I mean, visually much better with the upper body. And yeah, a couple of those things with those lines. I think you're doing a really good job understanding that slowest point now, right? Letting the
Right.
thing in point and maximizing what that, most of our bikes do well. Damn, good drive.
You can run a little bit wider out of that corner in
Right.
the right-hander with on
Yeah.
a slower bike because you don't have that tire spinning
Right.
problem.
Right.
Boy, that's a nice job. Round of applause right there.
Remember to subscribe to my channel. There is always something new to learn.
It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Watch out now. Cause baby, I feel real good and I wish I would. Watch out now. It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Watch out now. Everybody watch out. Watch out now. I'm ready for a good time and I came to groove.